All right, welcome back. It's 11 minutes before 7 o'clock, and we want to talk about what's happening in Tobago, and the Tobago House of Assembly elections are expected next year. There has, however, been talk about autonomy for Tobago. It was the center of parliamentary debate under the previous government. On set to talk about local government issues in Tobago is none other than attorney Mr. Martin George. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, and good morning to you, Hayden, and good morning to your viewers and your listeners.
Yeah, so who's your pick for the THA elections, the internal PNM council elections?
Well, the thing is, Hayden, when one looks at the choices, I think they have about 7 or 8 contenders. All you can do is keep looking again, quite honestly and realistically, because the thing is, there's no clear successor that has been groomed or put in place. When you look at the state of the party, it tells you that post this internal election, there's going to be tremendous fallout, and there'll be need for a lot of healing within the party. And you're not seeing any one individual among all the contenders who really seems to have that leadership capability or capacity. Of course, that's a matter for them to sort out, and I assume they will try their best to do so. But there hasn't been anyone who has really captured or fired the imagination of the population. You look at some of the platitudes that they're pronouncing on the platforms, and it's the same old tired phrases, so there really needs to be a breath of fresh air in Tobago. You look at this current THA executive, they have basically mismanaged Tobago into the ground. That's the sad reality. You look at what
why would you make such a broad statement about
because okay, I'll give you an example. Over the past, say, 12 or 16 years, they've had at least $16 billion in allocations from government's revenue. You look around Tobago, ask anybody, ask visitors to Tobago, Trinidadians who go across there on vacation and stuff like that, where is the infrastructural development to justify that amount of money? Where's the accountability? You see, before you even talk autonomy, you must talk accountability. So that's the catchphrase I'm using, accountability before autonomy.
But a lot of the allocations being made to the THA are for recurrent expenditure to pay wages and salaries, and 90% of the people who are working in Tobago are being employed by the THA.
And do you know that many people in Tobago who are supposed to be paid salaries either are being paid late, they're not being paid at all. There are people who 3-4 months they are not getting their salaries. There are people who've been put on the breadline. You had the recent closure of the Human Capital Development Facilitation Company, right? So you had hundreds of people who were put on the breadline as a result, they themselves, their families. So the thing is, you ask yourself, apart from these things where you are saying that you're spending it on salaries and wages, what else are you doing? When you look at the 5th schedule of the THA Act, there are 32 areas of responsibility that the THA is responsible for. It's not just paying salaries. You're responsible for finance, you're responsible for agriculture, lands, fisheries, all those things. So therefore, where have you been spending the monies that you keep clamoring for every year? There's no proper accountability. The Auditor General is not lying, The Auditor General has said repeatedly the THA has failed to produce documents, failed to produce records, fails to produce bank records. I'm talking about serious implications of this, and this is coming from the Auditor General.
But Mr. George, this is not unique to the THA.
No, it's not unique to the THA.
The Auditor General's report has repeatedly called on ministries.
Many ministries, right. But I'll tell you why it's important to this country. When one looks at it per capita, you're talking on average, and I'm being very modest here with my figures, on average you're talking about $2.5 billion allocated to Tobago every year. Per capita, I think there's greater wastage and lack of accountability in Tobago than in all of Trinidad. Per capita. Understand what I'm saying? If you say the rest of the budget allocated to Trinidad, if you want to say generously, you say 60 billion. 60 billion for 1.25 million people, as opposed to 2.5 billion for 50,000 people. Where's the greater wastage occurring per capita? It is in Tobago, and it's something serious. And for years, it's been going on unchecked and untrammeled. And that's why we need to stick a pin and say, hey, listen, this needs to stop. There needs to be accountability first, and then autonomy next.
Even if we accept that, like all other ministries, there are the issues of inefficiencies, there are the issues of wastage.
The THA isn't a ministry. They have much greater powers than a ministry.
Understood. There may even be issues of alleged corruption. Now, the point is, where are we in terms of identifying the legislative framework that will give effect to greater transparency, to greater accountability in political governance?
Apart from the THA Act, you have the financial rules, which are a part of the THA Act, subsidiary legislation. If those rules are complied with and followed, you would see that even like, for instance, the surpluses that they have each year from their budgetary allocation, they're supposed to deal with that in a certain way. That has not been done. The Auditor General's report highlights those things. In one of the Auditor General's reports, you have situations where you've seen hundreds of millions of dollars not properly accounted for, no explanations given. So therefore, we have rules and regulations. And what I'm saying is, if we are talking about further amending the Constitution, then we must make sure we put a very rigorous framework for financial accountability in place first before autonomy.
Okay, fine. So therefore, this requires some measure of constitutional reform.
Well, the point is, there is the talk of constitutional reform for the greater autonomy. You can't do it without amending the Constitution. So I'm saying that we must ensure that the accountability issues are put at the forefront, because as it is now, it's a runaway horse. It really is a disaster in the making.
Now, when you look at the conversation that is taking place prior to leading up to the internal elections for the PNM Council in Tobago, are you satisfied that you're hearing the right issues being discussed in the public arena?
Well, the thing is, you're not hearing any issues being discussed.
So what is being discussed?
It's all about the cult of the personality. Each one is trying to say, well, you know, I am the person. But the point is, they're all bereft of ideas. They're devoid of any vision to take you anywhere. The Bible tells us a people without a vision shall surely perish, and that's what has been happening in the THA. In other words, I am not castigating the leadership entirely. I will praise and thank Mr. Orville London and his team for what they've done, but they've led us out of Egypt, but they've led us into the desert, and we've been wandering around for the last 16 years, lost in the desert. So the point is, we're going nowhere. They can take us no further. They told us we'd be going to the promised land. We are nowhere near that.
But what is the promised land for Tobago?
The promised land for Tobago is, you look at a model like, say, for instance, St. Martin, you look at the Cayman Islands, you look at Bermuda, where they are able to get a financial system that is sophisticated and integrated in the international world markets, where they are able to be the centers of economic power and finance, and still in a beautiful Caribbean setting. What more could anyone want? Where you can have your commerce being driven properly, right? You look at Singapore as a model. You remember, Singapore is an island that is 1/4 the size of Trinidad and Tobago. Remember that. Remember how small Singapore is. And Singapore is the 4th largest financial center in the world. It's the 5th busiest shipping port in the world. I've been there. You've seen containers for miles and miles and miles, cranes for miles and miles and miles. What are we doing with the resources and capability that we have?
It sounds like a great comparison. It sounds like a great comparison, but I'm not sure that Singapore is a good example for us.
No, it's a perfect example. I'll tell you why. Because when you look at what it was before.
All right.
When you look at what it was before and what it became, then you realize if you have the proper vision, you can take it anywhere.
Stick a pin right there. Folks, you're gonna continue with us after the break. We're gonna go to the news, and when we return, we'll have more of Martin George. We'll be back. Okay, welcome back. It's 4.5 minutes past 7 o'clock, and we're talking about local government issues with attorney Mr. Martin George on set this morning. Sir, what is the political solution for Tobago? If you say that all of these contenders for the position of Chief Secretary in Tobago are visionless, then what might be the alternative?
All right. Well, we start with the thinking and the learning that we would get from the great Dr. Martin Luther King when he started off his speech and he said, I have a dream. You must start with that. In other words, you must know where you want to be. As we were discussing during the break, I told you, when I give talks on career guidance and I explain to people how to plan your career, I always say you must plan it backwards. Start with where you want to be, and then work out the steps coming backwards as to what you need to do to get there.
And that's fine.
Right.
What's the political vehicle that you think can take Tobago there?
Well, the thing is, on the landscape now, it's difficult to envision any such vehicle, because the point is, I think you have a PNM which has a strong core and a strong base, but they lack the ideas to be able to move forward or to take Tobago further. And then you have fledgling parties which are, now getting off the ground and trying to form themselves. You had the TOP, which it has by and large, been the population is disenchanted with them. So therefore, there really is need, I think, for a new vision, a new force to come together and take Tobago forward.
Are you willing to be the proponent of that new vision?
No, I'm just willing to keep talking and sharing ideas and stimulating discussion, because the thing is, it begins with us having the conversations hidden. It's important to have that, because, say for instance, look at what happened with this investment recently with the THA, where they said they purchased 2 guest houses for a total of $32 million. And then now they're going to spend twice the cost of the purchase price. Have you ever heard any business decision like that? You're spending $68 million to renovate and refurbish the properties. So if that's the point, then why didn't you just buy something that is a proper going concern and you take it and run with it? Why is the THA getting into the business of running guest houses and small hotels when they have no track record, no expertise in that area? That's not your core business. Let the persons who are competent and capable do so. If these owners were not able to turn a profit, you think you, the THA, who has no experience, will be able to do so? And then you're spending $68 million to refurbish properties you purchased for $32 million? Which economic sense could that ever make? So the thing is, you see, you have so many things that are occurring which are creating a disaster in Tobago, because that's now $100 million down the drain. That is a reflection of what happened with the Richmond Great House. You remember when the THA took over the running of the Richmond Great House, and that turned out to be a massive disaster. So the point is, we have to get together to save Tobago. And I'm calling on all Trinbagonians, Trinidadians, Tobagonians, everybody who loves Tobago, because we're all passionate about Tobago. All the Tobagonians in the wider diaspora, I want them to come together and save Tobago. Otherwise, we are going to witness the disaster of Tobago, and we will have to call upon the prophet David Rudder to change his song. And instead of saying, Haiti, I'm sorry, he will have to say, Tobago, I'm sorry, because Ena was a mighty man, and to make matters worse, he was black. Black and back in the days when Tobago knew its place was in the back. But that brother, he strolled through Dr. Williams, who thought it wasn't very nice. And so today, my brothers and sisters in Tobago, they pay the price. Yeah, Tobago, I'm sorry.
But let's hope, Mr. George, and thank you for the serenade. Let's hope that Tobago doesn't have to pay the price.
I hope so, and that's why we need to talk now and have the conversation and shine the light on them.
The issue, though, is, do we not have to address constitutional reform to ensure that we can engender a higher level of efficiency and effectiveness in the discharge of the responsibilities of the THA?
It's not a precursor. It's not a precursor. In other words, if you are a good manager and a good administrator, you work with what you have, because it's always easy to clamor and say, well, the tools are not good. The material I have to work with is not good. Let me tell you, smart and astute and successful people, you know what? You give them lemons, they make lemonade, they open a stall, they start selling lemonade until they could buy a farm, and then now they're selling orange juice. That's what you do. You don't make excuses.
Mr. George, we're not talking about running a lemonade stand.
No, we are talking about managing.
We are talking about managing a small island economy that is subject to a number of vulnerabilities, and it is short on resources for the infrastructural development that you're talking about. So the question is,
this is where you went wrong with the start.
Do we need to have a new legislative framework within which...
It's not necessary. It's not necessary at all. It's not necessary.
So what is necessary?
If you are starting with an allocation of $2.5 billion every year, then it's a question of how you manage your resources. In other words, you must try to see what is your infrastructural development. There's so many ideas you could have. Look, for instance, a simple thing like Tobago to Trinidad transport. I have said repeatedly, we need to have a seaplane service, like, for instance, what occurs in the U.S. Virgin Islands between St. John, St. Thomas, and St. Croix. You have these little seaplanes. They run like a maxi taxi. You don't make any booking, you don't make any reservation, you just go, you join the line, and within 45 minutes you're on a flight guaranteed.
And that will be at a subsidized cost.
But
Will it be at a subsidized cost?
But the current airfare is at a subsidized cost.
Yeah, so what, you're going to continue with the subsidized service?
But the point is, the greater efficiency that you get. Think of it, if you have to do business in Tobago, right? A business person, if you have something, you can leave Port of Spain port, and in 20 minutes you are in Scarborough. You think of the efficiencies you are generating there. Tobagonians, there are so many thousands of Tobagonians who have to come down to Trinidad to Port of Spain for interviews, for school, for work purposes, even for business purposes. If they can get from Scarborough to Port of Spain in 20 minutes, you're landing in Port of Spain, you seaplane landing in the port of Spain, drop you out, you do your business, you take a seaplane, you back in Tobago in 20 minutes, you back in Scarborough, you could be back in your job and continue working for the day. We have to start thinking outside the box, Hayden, and that's what we have not been having. But there's nobody who is giving that kind of vision in Tobago.
You're talking about yet another subsidy. Another subsidy.
Hayden, I'd rather give a subsidy for something that works than waste money on a hotel where you're going to pay twice the amount of the cost of the hotel to refurbish it.
The THA may
and you're not in the business of running a hotel.
We gotta go. We can continue this. We can continue this later in the week. Mr. Martin George, attorney and not a politician, of course.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not a politician at all. Let's make that fundamentally clear. It's 12 minutes past the hour, 7 o'clock. We'll be right back with a lot more morning edition, so stay with us.